Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to jump right into one of the biggest puzzles in the modern workplace. It's called the remote workforce paradox. We're going to look at how you're supposed to navigate this tricky balance between productivity, culture, and, of course, security in this whole new world of work. Okay, let's start with a number: 79%. Now, that might just sound like a random statistic, right? But trust me, this single number, it represents an absolute earthquake in how we work, how we live, and how we lead. It's really the key to unlocking everything we're talking about today. So what does that 79% actually mean? Well, it means the great remote work debate, it's over, done. This isn't some temporary trend or a little experiment we're all trying out. No, it's a permanent, baked-in part of our economy now. We're not just settling into a new normal, this is the new equilibrium. But, and this is a big but, this new equilibrium has thrown a huge, fascinating challenge our way. And that's exactly what we're going to break down today. Let's call it the remote work paradox. So here's where things get really interesting. On one hand, data from Gallup is crystal clear. Fully remote workers, they are the single most engaged group of employees out there, 31%. But here's the paradox. That exact same group reports the highest levels of stress, anger, and loneliness. So the very thing that's making them so engaged is also somehow making them miserable. How does that work? So if you're a leader trying to navigate this, success suddenly looks a lot like a high-stakes tightrope walk. You're balancing these three giant wobbly pillars, and they all depend on each other. If you let one of them slip, the whole thing can come crashing down. So what are these pillars? They are productivity, culture, and security. Let's dig into the first one. All right, pillar one, the productivity puzzle. And we call it a puzzle for a good reason, because the data that leaders are looking at is, well, it's all over the place. It's really confusing. And here's a perfect picture of that puzzle. You've got some data saying remote work is a massive 47% productivity boost. But then you have serious academic studies saying, nope, it's actually a 10% drop. So, which one is it? Are your people crushing it from home, or are they hardly working? It's a huge disconnect. So what gives? How can both be true? Well, it turns out we've been asking the wrong question. The big aha moment here is that location, it's not the main thing driving productivity. Not at all. The real difference makers are the systems, the tools, and maybe, most importantly, the management practices that you build around your employees. And when you start looking at it that way, the data makes more sense. Check this out. Remote workers are getting almost a full hour more of deep, focused work done every day. And get this, they're making 40% fewer mistakes. So you see, it's not just about working more. It's about a completely different, maybe even better kind of productivity. You know, we always think the enemy of productivity at home is, I don't know, the laundry or the dog, but it's not. The real productivity killers are these deep, systemic problems that just get magnified when everyone's remote. I'm talking about stuff like digital friction, having to juggle 11 different apps just to get your job done, or that crushing always-on culture that just leads straight to burnout. These are the problems we actually need to solve. And that leads us perfectly into our second pillar, the culture conundrum. Think about it. In an office, culture can kind of happen by accident, right? It's in the coffee breaks, the hallway chats. But when everyone's distributed, you have to build it. You have to engineer it with purpose and intention, or it just won't exist. Okay, let's go back to that paradox from the beginning, but with a bit more detail. Just look at that fully remote row. Engagement? Through the roof, the highest of any group. But then look at the other columns. Thriving in life? Lower. High stress? The highest. This is a huge, blinking red flag for any leader. It's basically screaming that if you're only looking at engagement, you're missing a massive and, frankly, dangerous part of the story. And one of these sneakiest dangers to a hybrid or remote culture is something called proximity bias. It's just a fancy term for a really simple human instinct. We tend to favor the people we physically see every day. It's usually not on purpose, nobody's trying to be a villain, but the result can be a really unfair two-class system within your company. So this is the question you really have to ask yourself, and you have to be honest about it. Are there people on your team getting passed over for big opportunities, for promotions, for the cool projects, just because they're a face in a Zoom window instead of a person you can bump into down the hall? And that brings us to our final and maybe most critical pillar, because it holds everything else up, the security imperative. Because look, the move to remote work didn't just change our commutes. It took the old rulebook for cybersecurity, threw it in a shredder, and then set the shredder on fire. The old way of doing things was what we call the castle and moat model. You had a big, strong firewall, the moat, around your office, the castle. Simple. But now, we're in a borderless enterprise. The perimeter, that safe zone, it's not the office walls anymore. It's everywhere. It's every single employee on every single device, in every single coffee shop or home office on the planet. In this new borderless world, there's really only one strategy that works. It's called zero trust. And the philosophy behind it is so simple, but it's a game changer. It's just this: never trust, always verify. That's it. You assume nothing and no one is safe by default. Doesn't matter if they're logging in from the office or from halfway across the world. So how does zero trust actually work? It boils down to 3 core rules. First, verify explicitly. That means you authenticate and authorize every single request for access, no exceptions. Second, use least privileged access. You only give people the absolute bare minimum permissions they need to do their job and nothing more. And third, and this one is key, assume breach. You basically operate as if the bad guys are already inside, and you build your network in small, sealed-off segments to stop them from moving around. Okay, so we've walked the tightrope. We've looked at productivity, we've looked at culture, and we've looked at security. But here's the most important takeaway of all. You can't fix these things one at a time. They're not separate problems. They're all part of one big, interconnected system. You need a single, unified strategy to tackle them all. So what does that unified strategy actually look like on the ground? Well, it means your CIO or CTO is auditing all your tech, hunting for that digital friction we talked about. At the same time, your head of HR is totally redesigning performance reviews to stamp out proximity bias. And you see the common thread here? It's partnership. Tech and HR can't be in their own silos anymore. They have to work hand in hand to build an employee experience that's both smooth and fair for everyone. And that brings us right back to where we started, standing on that tightrope. Every single company out there is trying to balance these 3 pillars. So the question I want to leave you with is a simple one. Look at your own organization. Which way are you leaning? Are you tilting too far towards one pillar and neglecting the others? And more importantly, what's your plan to find your balance again?